I think the first priority for the Cardinals this season has to be making sure that Kyler doesn't get injured, and that starts with Booster in
Yeah.
the O-line. And oh, I'm gonna butcher this name.
Hello, I'm Colin,
And I'm Charlie.
and welcome to the C&C Talks podcast, episode 13 of season 3.
Just a reminder, we release episodes every week, and we talk about politics, world events, and sports. As for us recording this, it is Wednesday, April 24th, 2024, at about 4:15 p.m. Pacific Time. And it is a busy news week this week, so we decided to bring on our friend Zack yet again to talk about the protests at Columbia University and other universities across the country. But first, a little bit of background information from Colin regarding the protests.
Yeah, so this really the biggest one at Columbia University in New York City, where a bunch of students at the university have been camped out on the lawn at the campus. It is private land, protesting the war in Gaza. Unclear exactly what they're asking the university to do, right? They're calling for a ceasefire, which is fine, and they're calling for a free Palestinian state. All fine, but what exactly do they want the university to do about this? Unclear, but they say that they're going to stay there for a long time, and we've now seen police come in to try to get the protesters out. We've seen the school suspend a bunch of students because it is against the student code of conduct, something that several faculty at the university have said is a real problem, that they should not be suspending students for this. Now, it is worth noting the protesters here, if you can call them that, they did remain mostly peaceful in terms of there wasn't actually like significant physical violence, and if and when they were arrested, they did not seem to be resisting arrest, but there was a bunch of harassment of Jewish students. So, yeah, Zack, love to get your thoughts on the protests that are going on at Columbia.
Obviously, I think the violence is not okay, but I do think that I very much believe in the right to protest. I think that is one of the very foundational ideas that founded America, and I think that should be something that everybody is allowed to do. However, I don't think it's okay to harass people. And I also think that just on an ethical level, yes, it's okay to protest, but I don't think it's ethical to be harassing and sort of going towards violence. I know you said they haven't committed acts of violence, but it's definitely, from what I've seen, it has gotten very close to that. And I have problems with why they're protesting just personally. I think that they are sort of construing Jewish people with the Israeli government, which I don't. They're two completely unrelated things, and they should be considered separate. Like most of Jewish people in America are not the same as the Israeli government. Those are two very separate things, and if you start comparing them, that is a dangerous thing. That is something that causes anti-Semitism and something that is not ethical.
Yeah, and anti-Semitism definitely on the rise here in America, including on the left, who is the main perpetrator of these protests. Charlie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really agree with what Zack was saying, particularly when it comes to the difference between Jews living in America and the Israeli government. Obviously, two very different groups. And I think the point that you bring up about the university students, even if Columbia does agree, I don't feel that there's much that Columbia University can do personally. It's not like they can just walk over to the Israeli government and say, okay, you need to end the war now. And I think there was also some instances. I believe there was there's been examples of protesters where people in power have said, I agree with you, but there's not much I can do. I think there was an example of a small town somewhere in the middle of the country where that was going on. But I do agree with the statement that Zack has made about the differences between Jewish people in America and the Israeli government. And I also wanted to then also mention, because of these protests, Columbia has actually had to go remote. And Colin, I wanted your thoughts on that decision.
Yeah, I think a lot of the protesters think of this as a win for themselves. I think it's also, though, a win for the Jewish students who said that they apparently did not feel safe being in the same class as some of these protesters, which is understandable given some of the actions. But so I think there's a couple different things at play here. First of all, whether the protests at all have gone too far, and then whether what they're protesting for is right. And those are completely different, because I think we can all agree that here in America, regardless of whether you agree with what they're protesting or not, everybody has that First Amendment right to free speech, to free assembly, right? And I'll start there, because I do think that there were lines crossed here with these protests, with the harassing of other students, with being out on lawns at at private property. I've seen some comparisons from these people on the left to how they're being arrested to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And I think what's notable, MLK and the rest of the civil rights protesters, right, they realized that they were probably going to get arrested. They realized in some cases that they were in fact breaking the law, although there are differences between harassing people and going and sitting on the front of a bus. But they realized that, and they decided that that was worth it for their cause. And we should be very fortunate, in fact, that that is what they decided, because that is how they were able to affect meaningful change. Now, the protesters in this case, they can make that same calculus. Is that worth it for their cause to break laws? They seem to have decided that the answer is yes, but then they do not seem at all prepared to face those consequences once suspensions have started to come down for violating the code of conduct, once they've started to be arrested, right? They do not seem prepared to face those consequences, and they seem to think they're being treated unfairly. No. Now, as for what they're actually protesting in the first place, right, I think some of it is completely reasonable. A ceasefire, sure, there definitely should be a ceasefire in Gaza with a exchange of hostages, temporary at first, but working towards a lasting ceasefire. Freeing Palestine, sure, great. If that means a two-state solution, I mean, good luck getting it to work, but that is ultimately the goal that I think should be worked towards. Right? That's all great, but then they go further than that by harassing American Jews, by comparing them to the Netanyahu regime, as you guys mentioned, and beyond that, praising Hamas, who committed acts of horrible violence too, and praising what happened on October 7th and saying that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. If that's your belief, you've completely lost the plot, because you cannot say that you are anti-genocide if you believe that what happened on October 7th, which is the largest genocide of Jews in a single day since the Holocaust, you cannot argue, if you support that genocide is bad. I'm sorry, you cannot do that. And you can protest here without being anti-Jewish and pro-Hamas, right? It is possible to be pro the Palestinian people and pro the Israeli people without being pro-Hamas and without being pro-Netanyahu, right? I think that is the common sense argument here. And then also with the politics of all of this, right? Because a lot of them seem to be protesting Biden, who, by the way, he supports a ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire with an exchange of hostages. That is the official position of the Biden administration at the moment, right? So both sides here are not the same. And you know how you know that both sides are not the same? If you think these protests would be allowed in the Trump administration, you're completely crazy, right? Trump would invoke the Insurrection Act and send the military onto the streets to shoot these people. That is what would happen. And especially, too, I feel like there's some bit of entitlement here among these protesters, because they're all, it has happened at multiple pro-Palestinian protests that we've seen chants of death to America. What other country could you chant that in and get away with it on the streets? I think that shows you, the fact that that's allowed, that America is frankly a pretty special place in that regard, and that we do actually have a lot of freedom here that I think these people take for granted, Zach.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I would say, to add on to, I'm just going to address a couple different points you made, because you made a lot of points there. I think that I completely agree with you with the Hamas part. I think that supporting, we should call Hamas exactly what it is. It's a terrorist group. And we know that the people in Gaza, for the majority of those people, they don't support Hamas. Hamas has done nothing for them. It's not helping them. Hamas is not helping them get food, water, the things they need. Hamas started this war that has put them in a position where they're even worse off than they were before, which is honestly a feat because Israel was keeping it was limiting the resources that they allowed to Gaza. And I just wanted to make that point that Hamas is not a good organization, and supporting them is not supporting Gaza. And supporting Gaza is not being anti-Israel and anti-Jewish. You can do both, and I think you made that point. Another point I wanted to make is about the protesting about death to America. I think that's just extremely ignorant, and I think that honestly to talk about, like, it's a privilege to live in America where you have these rights and where you can speak your mind for the most part and not be ridiculed. Well, you can be ridiculed, but you can't be arrested. Like in almost any other country, that would not be accepted, like you said, Colin. I think that these people are being blinded by their own privilege of having these rights in America, and it's very ignorant to say death to America when America's the country giving you the voice to say these things. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think this is really a good spot for us to move on. Thank you, Zack, for joining us yet again, and we hope to see you soon.
Yeah, it was great being on a podcast. I'll see you guys another time.
Yep, and we will move on now to other news out of the state of New York, where Trump's trial really officially getting underway this week. We had jury selection last week. A full jury was seated. A couple of jurors did have to leave the case after they had already been selected for various reasons. We've also heard, Charlie, that Trump has been asleep in court and potentially farting in the middle of court. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that unless the Republicans start saying that he's too old, there might be a small little double standard there between him and Joe Biden. But yeah, this is, of course, making history here. A former president now officially on trial, and the jury selection having been now fully selected. I think it is interesting, though, to note that a couple of the jury had to leave this case. But I did want to really talk about get your thoughts on the hearing about the Trump gag order. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Tuesday morning, there was a ruling. The judge essentially said that Trump would be fined $1,000 for violations of the gag order, and that future violations would risk getting him thrown in detention, which would obviously be a huge escalation, the one that would almost certainly be deserved. I cannot think of any other defendant who would be able to say what Trump has said about the judge, about the witnesses, while under a gag order and still be a free man at the moment. So we'll see what happens there. David Pecker, the head of the National Enquirer, was the first witness of this case. As of when we're recording this on Wednesday, he is still testifying. Wednesday, there's no courts throughout the trial, is what is expected. But yeah, with Trump falling asleep, Charlie, I mean, I feel like that should be talked about more, because if Joe Biden is, if the media and Republicans are saying, oh, Joe Biden's too old, I feel like we should maybe be talking about the guy who's 3.5 years younger and also is falling asleep in court. Is he even able to execute the duties of President of the United States if he can't stay awake during his own criminal trial?
Yeah, I think that is obviously something that needs to be looked into by the Republicans. He's obviously the presumptive nominee for this party, and would be a huge double standard if the Republicans would be pushing this narrative about Joe Biden, but not looking at their own candidate who is doing very similar things, obviously in a very different context. Now, let's get to Congress now, who has passed the U.S. foreign aid package to, I believe it's some small amount goes to Taiwan and the Pacific Islands, and there's a big chunk of it to Ukraine and also some aid for Israel as well.
Yeah, one word. Finally. It is long past time that this aid package get passed. Ukraine gets the most aid out of this, then Israel, and then Taiwan. Ukraine desperately needs this aid for their war with Russia, and it finally got passed with significantly more Democratic support than Republican support. So we'll see if this ends up actually costing Speaker of the House Mike Johnson his job. We won't know yet, given that the House has, and forgive me if you've heard this before, gone on recess. So we'll see when they come back. There is a motion to vacate at the moment, but no one has made it privileged yet, which means that essentially Mike Johnson gets to choose when to call the motion to vacate.
And can you guess who is trying to push this one forward?
This one's Marjorie Taylor Greene, who actually was a big supporter of Kevin McCarthy, which I found somewhat shocking. But she is now first in line to get Mike Johnson out of there. So we'll see what happens. It would be truly something special if we end up with 3 different speakers of the House in one Congress. Not something that you see every day. And now moving on to some more news out of the Middle East. Charlie, what more have we found out about this Israel-Iran conflict? Would you say that now, because Israel did do at least some small retaliation, would you say that we're now de-escalating, or do you expect this to escalate even further?
Well, I think the move by Israel for a limited retaliation was likely a good move. I think anything more than what they did would have likely caused another response by Iran. I think hopefully we're in a de-escalating phase. I know Iran said that they wouldn't, the Iranian government stated that they would not pursue any further action, and I don't believe that
Definitely a good thing.
And I don't believe that Israel has any interest in trying to start a war with Iran. They already have their plate full with what's going on in Yemen, obviously the war in Gaza, and they also have Hezbollah on their northern border in Lebanon. So I don't see any reason why they would want to start it. So all logic points to de-escalation.
Yep, that is good news. Now, Charlie, stat of the week.
As we are now moving into our sports section, I figure we'll do another sports stat. We've done a lot of basketball recently. We're in the middle of the playoffs. Playoffs just started, and we have a great MVP race going on. So I figure let's make this one about MVPs. How many MVPs can you get since 2000?
Since 2000, can I work my way backwards?
Yes. So
okay.
2023.
So 2023 was Embiid. 2022 Jokic. 2021 Jokic.
3 for 3 so far.
2020 Giannis.
Yes.
2019 Giannis.
Yep.
2018. Let's see. I know that 2016 was Curry, as was 2015.
Yes, you're missing 2 in there. Both of them
so 2018.
played.
One of them was Westbrook 2017.
Westbrook was 2017.
And then was
Yes.
Harden,
And Harden was 2018.
Okay.
Yep.
Did either of them win another MVP? Or were those the
No,
only
those are the
MVPs
ones that they
won?
won.
Okay.
So you're in 2014.
Was it LeBron that year?
No.
Kevin Durant won.
It was Durant in 14, yes.
Did he win? He won 2 MVPs, or did he just win 1 career MVP?
I got 1 on this list.
Okay, so was it LeBron before that, 2013?
It was LeBron in
And then
2013.
he won 2 in a row,
And
I
in
think,
2012,
And in 2012, his first 2 were also back-to-back, yes?
Yes, but
Okay,
there's
but,
one in
but
the
there,
middle.
there was 1 in
He
between.
won 1 MVP and then got hurt every single year after that.
Oh, this was Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose.
Which was what year, 2011?
2011, yes.
Okay, so so 2009 and 2010 were LeBron as
Yep.
well. Okay. Kobe must have won some
Kobe
that
won
decade.
in 08.
In
There was those 2 MVP battles between him and LeBron in 9 and 10.
Okay.
All right, so we're in
yeah,
07.
So 07. Kobe did win others in the 2000s, right? Or was that the only one?
Looks like the only one he got, yeah.
Okay. Yikes.
This team was a 1 seed and got knocked out in the first round.
I don't know who the 1 seeds were in 2007.
They lost to the Warriors in the first round.
I don't know. Did Tim Duncan won MVPs this decade?
Yes,
right?
he won 2.
He won
He won
2.
2 back-to-back.
Was this 05, 06?
That he won? No, we're in 07.
No,
Duncan's
Dunkins was 05,
There was
06,
another
or was it
back-to-back in 05, 06, but it wasn't Duncan.
It was not Duncan. Shaq was retired, right?
Shaq
Or
won
he-
in 2000. I'll give you that
yeah,
one.
Okay, so Shaq won in 2000. Was Duncan 2003, 2004?
No, he did win in 2003, though.
So 2002, 2003.
Yeah, 2002 and 2003 were both Tim Duncan. You're missing, it's 4 guys with 5 MVPs. So you're missing 7, 6, 5,
Go ahead and tell me.
4. Okay, so it was 07 was Dirk. Nash won back-to-back in 05, 06.
Oh, of course,
Garnett
yes.
won in 04, and AI with the Sixers won in 2001.
Yeah, completely forgot about those back-to-back with Steve Nash, which
Also, Shaq should have won in
Shaq,
06.
yeah, Shaq was
Sorry,
very
05.
Shaq was very close on at least one of those.
And it
All
should have
right.
been Dwayne Wade in
All right,
06.
moving
but-
on to more NBA stories. We're going to start, Charlie, with the NBA's decision to ban permanently Jontay Porter of the Toronto Raptors for gambling. Right, this was not just gambling at all. This is gambling on the NBA, specifically on the Raptors to lose, I believe.
Yeah, actually, if you look back at some of the games he played, you can see like he'll be like one rebound away from hitting what he was supposed to, and then he'll intentionally not get the rebound and then leave the game with an eye injury or something like that. So this happened on multiple occurrences. I think this was a good move to ban him.
You have to do it, I think. I mean,
but the NBA also supports betting apps.
Yeah, they have, I believe, a partnership with both DraftKings and FanDuel. So there's obvious hypocrisy here, right? They clearly embrace gambling.
It's not just basketball. Baseball obviously had that huge thing with Shohei Ohtani of last month, and obviously they have big gambling sponsors as well.
Yeah, and right, this was obviously, I think, the right move to ban Jontay Porter, right? But the question isn't what you do about Jontay Porter. The question is what do you do with the next guy, and when it happens again and again, because
it's going to happen.
Because
again.
I don't think that you can honestly, in good faith, believe that Jontay Porter was the only person in the NBA or really in professional sports at all doing this at the moment.
No, absolutely not. He's not the only one. You have to imagine. So yeah, you really did bring up a good question about. Is there any way to tell? Obviously, I think he did make it quite obvious with a couple of blatantly. He seemed upset about hitting a three at one point in a game earlier this year. Obviously, that intentionally missed rebound that I was telling you that I was explaining earlier.
Yep.
So I think there's ways to tell. I don't know how they would if the player is making it certainly less obvious.
What about Boban missing free throws to get people chicken?
Yeah, I mean that's an example. Investigate Ben Simmons. All right, let's move on to the plan.
Yeah, all right.
And I'm going to let you talk about the 9-10 game.
Yeah, in the 9-10 game in the Eastern Conference, the
Bulls
Bulls took down the Hawks, which I don't know if there was another 9-10 game or something. Did one of them happen or something?
Yes, the Kings beat the Warriors, light the beam, and then they lost to the Pelicans. But
the beam is
he's off.
The beam is off. The beam is not coming back. Well, it will next year, like twice when they win 2 games
against the Warriors.
The Kings have a lot of work to do. I mean, so do the Warriors, to be fair, this offseason. But I don't see how you can keep the Fox to Sabonis duo together.
Let's talk about the 7-8 games in the West. Lakers Pelicans. Obviously, I kind of just spoiled it. Pelicans lost to the Lakers. Lakers get the 2 seed, a 7 seed. They played the 2-seeded Nuggets, and the Pelicans ended up beating the Kings to get the 8 seed. They are currently down 1-0 on the OKC Thunder. Game 2 of that series is actually
Wednesday night. Yeah, we're going to try to get this out Thursday mornings. As you'll see, because we have a mock draft coming up later in the show. It would not go well if that mock draft came out after the draft. I don't think anyone would listen to that. So in the Eastern Conference, though, that 7-8 game, the 76ers took down the Heat. Heat did sneak into the playoffs over the Bulls.
They lost Jimmy Butler in the process.
But they did lose Jimmy Butler.
And the Pelicans lost Zion.
Yeah, so the question is now, the Heat now, their first-round series is against the Celtics. They don't have a chance without Jimmy, right?
I mean, I would have said that anyway, but it's the Heat. They
have
Jimmy. One job in the playoffs, and that's beat the Celtics.
But at the same time, Jimmy Butler was the sole reason they were able to do that.
They're going to get swept.
I think
they're going to get swept. But it would honestly equally not surprise me if the Celtics managed to implode due to, well, 1, the Heat being good at beating them, and 2, it's the Celtics.
Yeah, let's talk about these other Eastern Conference series. We'll start with the Cavaliers and the Magic, Charlie.
Does anyone care about this series at all?
I actually think it's interesting. I kind of find both of these two teams fascinating, especially
the
Magic.
Similar.
Yeah, they are, but the Cavaliers up now 2-0 on this series with Game 3 scheduled for Thursday night. Do the Magic still have a chance left in this series?
I think they do. The Cavaliers held on in both games at home. I think back in Orlando, you're going to need a good game from Paolo, a good game from Franz Wagner. But yeah, I think Orlando at home has a good shot to win. Their defensive rating is very good. These two teams are very similar, and you have to think eventually Donovan Mitchell's not going to have one of his great games. He's had 2 great games to start the series. So I'm thinking likely it'll be 3-1 heading back to Cleveland. I think Cleveland finishes off the series in 5.
Yeah, I could see this going either 5 or 6, but I think Cleveland's definitely going to win the series.
I'm more worried for the future about Cleveland because I don't think they stand a chance against Boston in round 2. And the question is, does Donovan Mitchell stay? I think that this Orlando team, they'll be back next year. They overachieved this year.
Sure.
And I think that they could be a contender in the Eastern Conference in the next few
years. We definitely saw them slipping too near the end of the season. So,
so did Cleveland.
Sure. Now let's talk about that 3-6 matchup between the Bucks and the Pacers. no Giannis, at least so far in the series for the Bucks, and the series is 1-1 heading back to
With
Indianapolis.
2 great games from Lillard, I want to add.
Yes, that
He is keeping them
feels
in the series.
definitely
Playoff Dame is
concerning.
back.
Definitely concerning, though, for Milwaukee.
And Halliburton has just been gone.
Yeah, I
As
think.
particularly in Game 1.
Yeah,
He had a huge chance to go up 2-0, and he just did not show up.
Yeah, I really do think, though, that this is why the Pacers are better set up for the rest of the series, because I think eventually he'll show up. I think Dame will have a bad game. We'll see if we get Giannis back. I think, though,
And
the
Siakam
Pacers
has
are
looked
probably going
great.
to. Yeah, sure. I think the Pacers, though, probably going to win either way. And then finally in the Eastern Conference, that Knicks 76ers series, Charlie. Knicks up 2-0 after a great ending. Well, really, to both of those games. Both of them have been great games, but the 76ers kind of got screwed by the officiating in Game 2. Do they have a chance?
I think they do, and it relies on one guy, and that's Joel Embiid. How healthy is he? He didn't
Sure.
look great down the stretch in Game 1 after he left with a couple minutes left in the second quarter. He landed on that knee again.
Yep.
But so the question is, they're back in Philadelphia. I think that Philadelphia takes Game 3,
Yeah,
and
that's
maybe
kind of
Game
where I'm
4.
at.
I'm thinking Knicks in 6 is my thought.
Yeah, I feel
Maybe
this is
Knicks in
honestly
7.
this is kind of reminding me somewhat, if you remember back in 2022, that first round Celtics Nets series, because this was also a 2-7 matchup. All 4 of the games were close, but in the end, the Celtics swept them. I feel like that could happen
That
again.
could also happen, and obviously that Nets team was only the 7 seed because they were another 7 seed that was up higher in the standings earlier in the year. Obviously, different circumstances. That Nets team traded away all of their good players, and obviously Philadelphia is not really a 7 seed. If Joel
No.
had been playing the entire season, I imagine they're probably the 2 seed.
Yeah, I don't know about that high, but well, I mean, at the same time though,
He was having a ridiculous season.
But the
before he
standings
got
in the
hurt.
Eastern Conference were so close at the end of the year,
they
right?
don't catch Boston,
They win
obviously.
like 2 or 3 more games, and they're the 3 seed. So, I mean, it's possible. Now, moving on to the Western Conference, we'll start with that 1-8 matchup between the Thunder and the Pelicans. I mean, no Zion, as you mentioned, but I think this is going 7. I really do.
Yeah, the Pelicans looked really good, and if CJ McCollum hadn't gotten completely blocked on that final shot,
What was he thinking, by the way?
it is very likely that the Pelicans could be up 1-0 here. So
Absolutely.
My thought on this is I agree. I think this series could be very close. And honestly, I agree with you. I think this is going to go 7, and I would not be surprised if New Orleans moves on here. The Thunder are a young team. They'll obviously be back. But the question is that playoff experience going to hurt them as much as some people think that it will?
Yeah. Right now, that 4-5 matchup, Celtics and Mavericks, we are tied here at 1
Clippers,
apiece.
not
Sorry,
Celtics.
Sorry, Clippers and Mavericks, yes. Tied at 1 apiece.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think this is going to be a very close series. I think it'll go 7, just considering these two teams are very close. I think talent-wise, the Clippers should obviously not be the 4 seed. Given the amount of talent they have, they should likely be a 2 or 3 seed, honestly.
Sure.
But if their stars don't come to play like they haven't, it's particularly early in that season, they had a very early season slide right after they got James Harden. And I think that's what really hurt them.
Yep.
But they started playing really well late in the season, but yeah, I just
The
don't.
Mavericks are a good team.
I don't trust them. I think Luka pulls out some Luka magic like he always does, and I think that the Mavericks are going to move on here.
We've
Colin,
seen
what do you
some
think?
great series between Luka and Kawhi in the playoffs.
Yeah,
before.
it's round 3.
Yeah. So then in that 3-6 matchup, the Timberwolves up 2-0 on the Suns. I think the series is over, honestly. The
Suns are
question
done.
is Kevin Durant back in Phoenix next
And
year?
is Bradley Beal in Phoenix next
I
year?
mean, they have a lot of questions. I think Kevin Durant's under contract, but also we know how much contracts mean to Kevin Durant, Charlie.
If Kevin Durant goes back to OKC, that will be one of the most insane first games I ever see.
Yes. And then finally, Lakers, Nuggets. I have no clue what the Lakers were doing in the second half of Game 2, blowing a 20-point lead. Great shot by Jamal Murray. Are the Lakers being swept again?
Hey, Lakers fans, see? I told you. Do you need more proof? You guys are wrong about this every year. They're going to get swept. Stop overhyping teams that are not good. Hype up the good teams that you have, because you seem to have a lot of those throughout your history. Don't hype up the bad teams, because you're going to look like an idiot.
Yep. I mean, I don't know if they'll get swept at this point. That would kind of be my guess.
They're getting swept.
Okay. Sure. Well, we'll keep it at that, and we will move on to the WNBA.
5 at most.
Yes. The draft, as expected, Charlie, Caitlin Clark 1 overall to the Indiana Fever. No surprises there. But Cameron Brink going at number 2 to the Sparks. Camila Cardoso, the reigning national champion, to the Chicago Sky at number 3, where she'll now actually be teammates with the number 7 draft pick in this, Angel Reese from LSU. The national championship a couple years ago. We've seen some bad blood between those two players.
Oh, we absolutely have. But I think if they can really work gel as teammates, that Chicago team has the potential to be very good in the next few years.
Yeah, and then Rakia Jackson going 4 to the Sparks as well. J.C. Shelton at number 5 to the Dallas Wings. This was really surprising to me, though. Aaliyah Edwards falling all the way down to number 6. I saw her as a potential for even the number 2 pick, and definitely no further than 3 or 4. But she'll go to the Washington Mystics, who have to be thrilled
and
about
you gotta
that.
think that Washington just can't believe that she fell that far. But
Yep.
I did also wanted to quickly mention talking about the ratings here, because this was the most watched WNBA draft for a long time, if ever.
Since Deanna, it beat the previous draft by like over 3 times. The previous most watched was 2004 Diana Taurasi's draft, but I believe that this was also the most watched WNBA event of any kind in like
and it
decades.
was a draft.
And it was a draft.
We'll
so
see how much the attendance figures skyrocket when Caitlin Clark steps on the floor for her first game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends on just how well the Fever do, how well Caitlin Clark does, because she is definitely the biggest figure in women's basketball at the moment. Now, moving on real quick to the NHL playoffs as we take a look and preview these series and discuss what's happened so far. The Maple Leafs and the Bruins tied at 1 game apiece so far. The series shifting back to Toronto.
Yeah, and I think really for Boston, they have to avoid series loss. They cannot lose in the first round 2 years in a row.
Yeah, and we all know what happens with Toronto, too.
Yep.
Also, in the East, big comeback win in Game 2 for the Hurricanes over the Islanders. They're up 2-0, and the Panthers up 2-0 on the Lightning. We finally got a playoff overtime game. And the Panthers were able to win that in a battle in Florida as the series shifts back to Tampa Bay. And then the Rangers, Charlie, at least they're probably going to get one team into the second round at this point because they are up on the Capitals 2-0 in that series. Now, in the Western Conference, Vancouver, big loss to the Predators. That series is tied 1-1. Jets looked like they were doing pretty well in Game 2. That series is 1-1 now, though. Interesting stat, Charlie, about the Winnipeg Jets. In the last 13 years, there have been 2 teams named the Jets to have scored 7 points in a playoff game.
And both of them were
Winnipeg. None of them were the New York Jets.
Because the Jets haven't made the playoffs.
Yeah, that is...
and they're not going to this year because their quarterback is going to get hurt again.
Yes.
Likely.
Yeah, the Golden Knights, we've only seen 1 game so far there, but this is a rematch of the Western Conference Finals from last year, and they're up 1-0 on the Stars. And then the Oilers, big win over the Kings. I actually like the Oilers to go pretty far in this Stanley Cup playoffs.
McDavid on it, yeah, you
sure.
gotta like it.
And then some European soccer, real quick here. A big game in the UEFA Champions League last week in the quarterfinals between Man City and Real Madrid. The tie went to penalty kicks, and it was Real Madrid. Man City out of the Champions League. In fact, Arsenal also out to Bayern Munich. With the semifinals are now set. So no more English teams left in the Champions League or the Europa League. Just one, Aston Villa, I believe, left in the Europa Conference League.
Yeah, not a great look for us, obviously, but we'll do better next time.
By the way, you're
Hopefully.
totally losing in the Euro. I'm just letting you know that.
Let's make sure that we either lose or win. Please don't go to penalties again.
By the way, this is going to truly be a tremendous soccer summer, Charlie,
yes, it
because
is.
we've got obviously the competitions at the Olympics, but also Copa America and the 2024 Euro. So really excited to get to cover
it is going to be
all
a
of that
great
as
year
well as the Olympics. We'll
soccer.
have more in a couple weeks on how we're actually going to be covering the Olympics. So
yeah.
some foreshadowing there. But Charlie, I'm going to let you talk about Formula One before we do our mock draft.
The F1 grid returns to Shanghai for the first time since 2019. There was a planned race, obviously. Last year got canceled. I'm not actually sure exactly why, but first time since 2019, sprint race, first race of the year. to have a sprint race. And Verstappen, starting in 4th, did work his way up and passed Lewis Hamilton, who led 8 laps
Of course he did.
to win the sprint. And in the race, Verstappen on pole breaks away very early, but Lando Norris breaks past Sergio Perez. He'll take 2nd. There's a lot of questions about Perez. Does he stay? Red Bull's apparently been in talks with Carlos Sainz about bringing him on for 2025. Obviously, 2025 grid going to be very different than it was this year. This year, first time, 2023, 2024, first time that we had no movement from any team since Formula One started in 1950. There's also some questions about Daniel Ricciardo. How long does he stay at VCARB? Does he get replaced by Liam Lawson? That's a potential there. Or do they keep him there for another season and maybe replace Perez at the end of the season with Yuki Tsunoda and bring someone along with it? Or do we see an all-new lineup there?
So let me clarify something here, though, right? Verstappen's won every race except for one, which was Sainz, correct?
And the only reason that Sainz won that was because of a Verstappen brake failure in Australia.
But Perez has done essentially nothing.
Yeah, Perez is standing 2nd in the points. I believe that he's gotten a podium in every race, but
So given the Red Bull car, though, shouldn't Perez be doing
Perez
better?
should be. I will say Perez has gotten second or third in every race this season. But context: in the same car, finishing 15 seconds behind your teammate is not a good thing.
No, that I feel like they should probably think about abandoning him. I also. Are we sure that, or was it just contract stuff that is the reason that it's Leclerc staying at Ferrari with Hamilton as opposed to Sainz?
It is a contract thing. Plus, I think, given the situation when they agreed to that, I would have said that I would rather have Leclerc. But Sainz has had himself a very good year this year. So has Leclerc. Leclerc does not have only has 1 podium this year, but he has been very consistent in the points. And last thing I did want to mention, there was an incident after a safety car where Lance Stroll drove directly into the back of Daniel Ricciardo, basically ruining both of their races, to which Stroll responded by saying that it was essentially Ricciardo's fault because he locked up, with Oscar Piastri of McLaren responding with, well, everyone locked up, but you were the only one who seemed to have a problem with it. So really bad look for Aston Martin. They're not going to let go of Lance Stroll. Obviously, his dad, Lawrence Stroll, owns the team, but Fernando Alonso, you have to think that he doesn't have that much longer left in Formula One. And if you just have Lance Stroll and someone else on that team, how far can he carry the team? My answer is not very far. But that'll do it for the race in Shanghai. We are in Miami next weekend.
And now it is NFL draft week. And we started a tradition, I guess, last year on this show where we will do a mock draft, a partial mock draft. We did the top 10 last year. We're going to expand a little bit this year. We're going to do the top half of the first round. So number 1 through number 16, Charlie. We'll start at the top. And is there any disagreement between the two of us on this one? I imagine we're both picking Caleb Williams to the Bears.
We are both picking Caleb Williams to the Bears.
This is just clearly, to me, the best quarterback prospect in this NFL draft. And really that we've seen, I think, in quite some time. But I think, Charlie, the draft really gets interesting with Washington's draft pick at number 2 overall. They're likely going to go with the quarterback, or really almost certainly going to go with their back. But the question is, which one? Who do you have?
With the second pick, I have the Washington Commanders selecting Drake May.
Really? Why? Why him over Jaden Daniels?
It just seems like a move that Washington would make because it's the wrong move, in my opinion. Also, I don't know. I feel like with the system that they have, I like Drake May in a system like the one Washington has. I think Dan Quinn has the potential to be a good coach. And I think really they need a guy who can give the consistent, solid performances week in and week out, who has a low injury concern, because Dan Quinn is a very defensive-minded coach. So Washington,
Absolutely.
I think, going forward will be to win with defense and have a quarterback who just does what he needs to do. And if it's between Daniels and Drake May, I think Drake May is the more consistent of the two. So I think that Drake May will go to Washington.
Yeah, I originally, back when I first looked at this a few months ago, was on the Drake May train. But the more that I hear about it, the more I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels. Just it's essentially the people are more consistently moving from May to Daniels. Insiders think that it's more likely to be Daniels at this point. So I think I've got to pick him here at number 2 as that pick. Now, number 3, Charlie, is the Patriots, also in need of a quarterback. But at the same time, we know that there's a couple teams in this draft who are looking to trade up. Do the Patriots draft here, or do they trade?
I think that considering that Jaden Daniels is still on the board, I have Jaden Daniels going number 3 to the Patriots.
Yeah, I think in your scenario, it's a lot more likely that they pick just because I think Jaden Daniels is a better prospect than Drake May. But I think either way, they so badly need a quarterback that they're going to take the best available quarterback on the board. So for me, that would be Drake May at number 3 overall. So far, we're just kind of backwards in the top 3. Now, Charlie, number 4, which is the Arizona Cardinals pick, is where I think things get really interesting. They claim that they don't need a quarterback. Charlie, you and I have disputed that quite a bit over the last many months, and even I would say the last year or so. But again, there's another situation where they might trade back. I personally think that they will keep their pick at number 4. I think that they're going to go with the top wide receiver in the draft class, Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you think?
I think that the Cardinals will trade this pick to the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings will pick J.J. McCarthy.
That is a completely fair assessment, I think. Vikings obviously looking to trade up. They really want a quarterback, and actually that brings us to pick 5, where we have the Chargers have that pick. I actually think that it will be the Chargers trading back. That they're going to trade back to number 11. The Vikings will trade up to 5, and they will select JJ McCarthy. Although I think it's interesting because I look at the rest of the top 10. I think it's completely possible that McCarthy does end up actually falling to 11, and they don't even need to make the trade. But I think better safe than sorry is Minnesota just absolutely in need of a quarterback at this point. Charlie, what do you have the Chargers doing at 5?
So this is interesting because in my scenario, Marvin Harrison is still on the board.
Sure.
But the question is, do they go? They have 2 options. They can go with him, or, and I think this is going to surprise some people, I'm going to say that the Chargers go offensive line, and I think they're going to pick Joe Alt.
Really, at number 5 overall.
Yes,
that is definitely an interesting pick. So then we get to number 6 overall, Charlie. It's the New York Giants, who have a lot of needs, and it's unclear whether quarterback is going to be one of them. But I do not see a scenario where they would take a look at Penix or Nix this early in the draft. I think that they're either would trade up to get a quarterback, but I don't think that's especially likely. Or if they wanted a quarterback, they could trade back a bit. I think that they're going to go receiver here. I think they're going to go Malik Nabers at number 6 overall from out of LSU.
I also have a receiver that at pick number 6 would be a shock if he's still on the board. Marvin Harrison is going to the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, if the Giants are going to go receiver, on your board is undoubtedly the best available. I don't think it's that close. All right, number 7 overall is the Tennessee Titans. Offensive line feels like a big need here. Joe Alt, who is still on my draft board, feels like the best option remaining. So I've got him going to the Titans at number 7.
I have them. Now this is interesting because I don't have Joe Alt anymore, and I think
Correct,
that
you do not.
I think they need a weapon
Sure.
they really need a weapon for Will Levis. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say that the Tennessee Titans, maybe this is a little bit of a reach, but I'm going to say that they pick Rome Odunze.
Odunze at 7?
Yes.
To the Titans. Okay, I was definitely not expecting him to go that early. Now we're down to number 8 here. The Falcons. What's your move here if you're Atlanta?
I think Atlanta needs to bolster their defense.
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely they do.
The amount of really disastrous games that they had. Their offense is fine. They now that they have Kirk Cousins, their offense should be quite good. Give me Dallas Turner to Atlanta.
Yeah, that is the same thing for me. Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of the University of Alabama, to Atlanta at number 8. We both have him there. Atlanta, of course, picked at number 8 last year as well. Got Bijan Robinson out of that. They've now seemed to have found their quarterback in Kirk Cousins, although there have been rumors, at least in a few hours before we were recording this, that They might be interested in Penix at 8. I don't see why that would make any sense whatsoever for them. So, yeah, Dallas Turner. And then Charlie, it's back to the Bears, who I think a lot of people think at number 9 they might trade there. I do not agree with those people. I think that they're going to go Rome Odunze. And at that point, you've got Caleb Williams to throw into a pretty good group of receivers.
Yeah, I have the Bears picking up Malik Nabers here.
I forgot Nabers was still on your board. So you have Odunze going above Malik Nabers.
I do. I think that really
Is that just your Washington bias, or is that like an actual thought?
A little bit. I think that the if they can get, I think as of right now, I think considering that Levis has a little bit of experience, I trust him to work better with a guy like Odunze than a guy like Nabers. I've seen a lot more of Odunze, obviously being a Washington fan myself. Maybe it could be a little bit of Washington bias, but I do think that these two will both be very good NFL wide receivers.
Sure. And then number 10 is the Jets, who have a lot of needs, let's just say. I mean, I think, Charlie, you and I think that if they were actually smart, they'd draft a quarterback, but we also all know that that's not going to happen. So I think that they're going to go with Brock Bowers at tight end at number 10 overall.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. I think they could do that, and I think they will do that. Give me Brock Bowers as well to the Jets.
All right, now we've made it through 10, which is as far as we got last year. We will each do 6 more picks, Charlie. And this is interesting because at number 11, I assume that you had the Vikings giving up that pick to Arizona when they traded
Yes.
Dak there, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then, who is it?
Well, this is interesting.
Who are you having the Cardinals take?
I think the first priority for the Cardinals this season has to be making sure that Kyler doesn't get injured, and that starts with booster in the O-line. And I'm going to butcher this name. Tilasi,
the guy from Oregon State,
Fuanga, the Oregon State offensive tackle. Yeah,
decent pick. ESPN actually only has him as the 6th best offensive lineman. I'm not sure that most actually share that opinion, but now for me, it's the Arizona Cardinals. They have. I don't know if this is a smart pick. Oh, sorry, it's not the Cardinals for me. It's the Chargers for me, is it not? Yes, it is. Yes, I am picking the Chargers here. I had Marvin Harrison to the Cardinals. Excuse me. They have a lot of needs. I don't think that they take a wide receiver at 11 because they'd be taking the 3rd best wide receiver. I actually think that they go offensive tackle here as well. And for that, I think that I will go. I don't think I'll go with Fuaga. I think I'll go with the Penn State guy who also has a difficult name. Olu Muyiwa Fashanu, I believe. That's who I will take. No, this is to the Chargers at number 11.
Oh yeah, you have them trading back. Yeah.
Yeah, and so number 12, Charlie, Broncos hold that pick. We think that they're less in the market for a quarterback than we used to think they were.
I mean, this is interesting. I think that this is another team that just needs help everywhere, and I think that
the Broncos have nothing essentially.
And I think the key to setting up for the future is making sure that you have a solid defense, and I think you start that by getting a good defensive line. I think that they should take Byron Murphy.
I was going in the complete other direction. Who?
You're thinking offense.
No. Who did you pick it? You went with Byron Murphy out of Texas.
Yes.
No, I agree with you. You talk about defense there, but I think that they choose a different position defensively to target. I think that they're going to cornerback. I think they're going to go with Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo to Denver at 12. Now the Raiders hold the 13 pick. This is interesting because do they want to stick with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback is, I think, a very important question that the Raiders have to answer.
This is the Raiders at 13?
I said 13.
This is interesting. Who do you have?
I've got Penix. I really didn't think I would, but just the last couple hours, that's kind of where my mind has landed.
Yeah, this is interesting for me. I could definitely see them doing that, but they just did draft a quarterback, and I don't see that they have any reason that they should give up on Aiden O'Connell. So I think that they are going to go with that Penn State guy who I'm not going to even attempt that name. I'm sorry, but I think they're going to try to bolster the offensive line to help out Aiden O'Connell. And if this year doesn't work out and O'Connell
Okay.
doesn't pan out, then I think they'll go quarterback next year.
Am I allowed to change one pick really quickly?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, I've changed my mind at number 11 for the Chargers. I think that they go with Furaga from Oregon State instead of the Penn State offensive tackle. We're through 13 now. We've differed quite a bit, Charlie, on this so far. But now, pick number 14 is the Saints. Who do you have going 14?
Well, this is interesting. I mean, the Saints are strange to me. Do you go another line?
Undoubtedly.
Do you go defense? Defense. Who do you have here, Colin?
This is where I think they go by is it Byron Murphy?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that the Saints go defensive line because they need help. They need help on both the lines. I think is really where they have the most help needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think they need help on line. That's why I think J.C. Latham, offensive tackle out of Alabama, will go to New Orleans. All right.
So offensive tackle out of where? Oh, out of Alabama.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Pick 15, the Colts.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm
this
gonna
is
let you take this one first.
I mean, with Mitchell still being on the board, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't do that. I know they have a very young defense, and why not add to that? I think they should do with the same thing that Seattle's doing with their secondary. So yeah, give me Quinion Mitchell from Toledo to Indianapolis.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. I think they draft him if he's on the board, definitely. I also think if Brock Bowers is somehow remaining on the board at number 15 for Indianapolis, that's the direction that I think they go. But the cornerback, I think, is just the most important position for them, or really secondary at large at the moment. You're gonna have to give me Terry and Arnold here.
All right, and lastly for us, the Seattle Seahawks. Who do you have, Colin?
Troy Fontenot. I think it helps too that he's from Seattle, or not.
Yeah.
He played for the Huskies, so I think that does help.
That makes sense.
He can keep the same offensive coordinator. That's a big help.
Colin, I've been talking about this for a while. I keep telling you they should do it. I think the Seahawks.
Oh no, you think they're going to Penix?
Draft Michael Penix. Give him a couple years under Geno. You can have him start a couple starts with Sam Howell as well, just for a little bit of quarterback competition. I think that Michael Penix could be the future in Seattle because I don't know how many good years Geno Smith has left.
Yeah, I'm just running through my picks right now, and I'm realizing right now that I only differ on one pick from Dan Parr of NFL.com, which is unfortunate because I don't think he has a great history of getting picks right, but he has.
Yeah, I'm looking at my mock
number 14. The Saints going with J.C. Latham, which is also the same thing you said. I had them going on defense instead. There, he has Byron Murphy, who I picked there, going to the Rams at 19. The Rams would be undoubtedly thrilled if Byron Murphy is still on the board for pick number 19. All right, but Charlie, any more comments on your draft board?
No, I think that's it. There's some more from the Seahawks. They're obviously going to get their obligatory second round running back because they like to do that for some reason. I imagine us to pick up some good guys in the late rounds of this draft, and I'm really excited for this season. I think a lot of Seattle fans are really thinking that this might be a year that we tank or just don't have a good roster. I am cautiously optimistic. I think we can get another 9-8, maybe 10-7 record, depending on how the cards fall.
Yeah, this is my final comment, which is that Charlie and I each only put one trade in the top 16. I would actually be pretty surprised if there's only one trade in the top 16, Charlie. I think we could see several trades this year in the first round. Loaded quarterback class, very good receiving class. I think really in general, this is one of the better classes the better draft classes that we've had in the last, really long time. So lots of teams looking to make some moves, and ultimately we don't know, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And that's going to do it for this episode of C&C Talks. Thanks for listening. Episodes coming out every single week wherever you listen to your podcast, so make sure that you subscribe and visit our website, cctalks.com, which has everything you need to know about the show. And call us with your questions at 360-389-2630. Again, that's 360-389-2630. And follow us on Twitter at C&C Talks Podcast. And follow Charlie at C&C Talks Charlie. And join our Discord server at cctalks.com/discord. All this information is in the description below. But for now, for our producer Morris and our production designer Zach, I'm Colin.
I'm Charlie, and we'll see you next week.